If you woke up today thinking gun permits work the same way they did yesterday, you might want to think again, because something just happened, quietly, quickly, and most people don't even realize how big it is yet. No massive headlines, no long debates on TV, just one decision from the highest court in the country, and suddenly, everything feels different. Let me explain, because this isn't just another legal update. This is the kind of shift that changes how laws are interpreted, how rights are applied, and how everyday people interact with the system. And the most surprising part? It didn't look dramatic on the surface. No shouting, no chaos, just a ruling, clean, direct, and unanimous. A 9-0 decision, every single justice on the same page. That alone should make you pause. Because in today's world, getting everyone to agree on something this sensitive, that almost never happens. So what exactly changed? At first glance, it might seem like nothing has been banned outright. No official announcement saying gun permits are over. But when you look deeper, when you read the fine print, when you understand how this decision interacts with existing laws, you start to see the shift. Because this ruling didn't just target one policy. It targeted the way decisions are made, the way approvals are handled, the way authorities justify who gets a permit and who doesn't. For years, in many places, getting a gun permit wasn't just about meeting clear requirements. It often came down to something more vague. Discretion, a word that sounds harmless, but in practice, it meant that two people with the exact same background could get completely different outcomes. One gets approved, the other gets denied. No clear explanation, no consistent standard, just judgment. And that's where everything begins to change. Because this ruling goes straight at that idea. It questions whether that kind of system is even allowed. Now think about that for a second. If decisions can't be based on vague reasoning, if authorities are required to follow clear, objective rules, then what happens to the entire permit system built on discretion? That's the real story. Not a loud ban, but something more subtle and potentially more powerful. A shift from subjective decisions to objective standards, from "we'll decide" to "we must follow the rule." And when that happens, some systems don't survive the transition. Because here's the truth most people miss. A lot of permit systems weren't designed to be purely objective. They were built with flexibility, with room for interpretation, with the ability to say yes or no based on more than just checkboxes. But now, that flexibility is under pressure. Imagine a system where every decision must be justified with clear, consistent criteria. No guesswork, no personal judgment, no hidden standards. Sounds simple, right? But in reality, that kind of change forces entire departments to rethink how they operate. And that's exactly what's happening now, quietly, behind the scenes. Agencies are reviewing policies, lawyers are reinterpreting guidelines, officials are asking one question: does our current system still hold up under this new standard? And in many cases, the answer isn't so clear. Because when a ruling challenges the foundation, everything built on top of it starts to shake. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. This isn't happening in just one place. This kind of decision has ripple effects across states, across jurisdictions, across systems that were never meant to be identical, but are now being measured by the same standard. And when that happens, you start to see patterns. Some places adapt quickly. They shift to clear, checklist-based approvals. They remove ambiguity. They streamline the process. Others, they hesitate. They push back. They try to hold on to the old way of doing things. But here's the problem. When a higher standard is set, ignoring it doesn't make it go away. It creates tension, legal challenges, confusion. And for everyday people, uncertainty. Because now the question isn't just, can I get a permit? It's, what rules actually apply anymore? And that uncertainty is exactly what's driving so much attention right now. Some are calling it a win, others are calling it dangerous. Many don't fully understand it yet. But almost everyone agrees on one thing: this is not a small change. Now let's break down the real-world impact, because this isn't just about legal theory. This affects actual people, real applications, everyday decisions. Picture someone applying for a permit. Before this ruling, they might have needed to prove something beyond basic eligibility. A special reason, a unique circumstance, something that set them apart. Now, that requirement may not hold the same weight. If the system demands objective standards, then the focus shifts from "why do you need it?" to "do you meet the criteria?" And that's a very different question, because one is subjective, the other is measurable. And when systems move toward measurable standards, access often changes. Sometimes it becomes easier, sometimes it becomes stricter, but one thing is certain: it becomes more predictable. And predictability changes behavior. People who never applied before might now consider it. People who were denied might try again. And agencies that relied on discretion must now adjust. That adjustment period, that's where things get complicated. Because transitions like this are rarely smooth. There are gray areas, conflicting interpretations, temporary policies, and during that time, different places may handle things very differently, which leads to something most people don't expect: 2 locations, same law, completely different outcomes, at least for now. Until everything settles, until courts clarify, until systems align. But until then, we're in a moment of change. And moments like this don't stay quiet for long. Because once people start noticing differences, once applications start getting different results, once policies start shifting publicly, the conversation explodes. And that's exactly what we're beginning to see. Online discussions, legal breakdowns, conflicting headlines. Some saying, nothing has changed. Others saying, everything has changed. And the truth? It's somewhere in between, but leaning in one very clear direction. Away from discretion, toward structure. And that direction is what's causing all the attention. Now here's the part most people aren't talking about yet, but will soon. What happens next? Because a ruling like this isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning. A signal, a shift, a starting point for a series of changes that don't happen all at once, but unfold over time. Policies get rewritten, guidelines get updated, new cases get filed, and each one pushes the system further in the same direction, until eventually, what once felt normal no longer applies, and something new takes its place. But we're not there yet. Right now, we're in the middle. The transition phase. And that's where things are the most unpredictable. Because during a transition, rules exist, but interpretations vary. Authority exists, but limits are tested. And people are trying to figure out where they stand. Which brings us to a critical question. If the foundation has shifted, what does that mean for the systems built on top of it? Because not every system adapts the same way. Some evolve, some resist, some collapse. And understanding which is the key to understanding what happens next. But that's where things get even more complex. Because the next phase isn't just about permits. It's about how this reasoning applies to other areas, other policies, other decisions, other systems that rely on the same kind of discretion. And if the same logic is applied there, then this change might be bigger than anyone expected, much bigger. And that's exactly what we're going to break down next. Because in part 2, we're going deeper into the ripple effects, the legal challenges already forming, the states most affected. And the real question everyone is starting to ask, is this just the beginning of a much larger shift? Or has everything already changed, and most people just haven't realized it yet? So, what happens next? Because a ruling like this doesn't just sit quietly in the background, it moves, it spreads, and most importantly, it gets tested. Right now, across the country, lawyers, judges, and state officials are all asking the same question. How far does this go? Because once a legal standard changes, it doesn't stay limited to one situation. It starts affecting everything connected to it. And that's exactly where we are. We're at the point where this decision is no longer just a theory. It's becoming reality. Let's talk about the ripple effects. First, legal challenges. This is always the first wave. The moment a major standard shifts, cases start appearing. Fast. People who were denied permits before, they're coming back. Organizations that disagreed with certain restrictions, they're filing new lawsuits. And lawyers, they're using this ruling as a weapon, not aggressively, but strategically. They're pointing to it and saying, if this standard applies here, then it should apply there too. And suddenly, laws that once felt stable are being questioned. Some will hold, some won't. But every challenge pushes the system further. Now let's talk about states, because this is where things start to look very different, depending on where you are. Not every state built its system the same way. Some states already rely heavily on clear, objective criteria. For them, this shift might not feel dramatic. They're already aligned or close to it. But other states, they built their systems differently, more flexible, more discretionary, more dependent on judgment calls. And for those states, this is where pressure builds, because now they have to ask, can we keep doing things the way we've been doing them? And if the answer is no, they have two choices: adapt or defend. Adapting means rewriting policies, changing procedures, training officials. It's not simple, but it's possible. Defending, that means going to court, arguing that their system still fits within the new standard. And that's where things get intense. Because when states defend their systems, they're not just protecting policies, they're setting precedents. Precedents that could influence every other state watching. Now here's something most people overlook. These changes don't happen overnight. Even if a ruling feels immediate, implementation takes time. There are internal reviews, legal consultations, temporary guidelines, and during that time, confusion is almost guaranteed. One office might interpret the ruling one way, another office differently. One application gets approved, another denied. Same situation, different outcome. And that inconsistency, that's what creates headlines. That's what fuels debate. And that's what makes people feel like everything has changed, even if the full impact is still unfolding. Now let's talk about the people most affected, because behind every law, there are real individuals, applicants, gun owners, first-time buyers, people trying to understand what they can and can't do. For them, this moment is confusing, because they're hearing different things. Some sources say, it's easier now. Others say, nothing has changed. And some say, be careful, because the rules are unclear. And the truth? All three can be true at the same time, depending on where you are. And that's what makes this moment so unique. It's not black and white. It's a transition. Now here's where things get even more interesting. This ruling isn't just about permits. It's about a principle, a way of evaluating laws. And once that principle is established, it doesn't stay contained. It spreads. Other policies start being measured the same way. Other restrictions get questioned under the same logic. And suddenly, what started as one decision becomes a broader shift. Now think about that. If the same reasoning is applied across the board, then this isn't just about permits. It's about how rights are interpreted, in general. And that's where the real impact lies, because when interpretation changes, application follows. And when application changes, systems evolve or break. Now let's address the biggest question people are asking. Are gun permits actually banned? The honest answer? No. Not in the way most people think. There hasn't been a nationwide order saying, permits no longer exist. But the way permits are handled is changing. And in some places, that change can feel dramatic. Because when discretion is reduced and objective standards take over, the entire experience shifts. It might become more accessible. It might become more structured. But it definitely becomes different. And that difference is what people are reacting to. Now here's something critical. Moments like this create opportunity, but also risk. Opportunity for those who understand the change. Risk for those who assume nothing has changed. Because acting on outdated assumptions can lead to serious consequences, and misunderstanding evolving rules, that's where people get into trouble. So what should people do? Simple. Stay informed, follow reliable updates, and most importantly, don't rely on assumptions. Because right now, we're in a phase where clarity is still forming, and until everything settles, awareness is everything. Now let's talk about the timeline. Because this isn't a one-week story. This unfolds over months, sometimes years. Each new case adds clarity. Each new decision refines the standard. And over time, a clearer picture emerges. But right now, we're at the beginning of that process. And beginnings are always the most uncertain. Now here's the part most people aren't ready for yet. This might not be the last major shift. Because once one standard changes, others can follow. New challenges, new rulings, new interpretations, and each one builds on the last. So what we're seeing right now might just be the first step, not the final outcome. And that's why this matters. Because understanding the first step helps you understand everything that comes after. Now let's bring it all together. This wasn't a loud decision. It didn't come with dramatic announcements. But its impact could be significant. Not because it banned something outright, but because it changed how decisions are made. And when you change the decision-making process, you change the outcome. Sometimes slowly, sometimes faster than expected, but always in a way that reshapes the system. So if you're hearing headlines saying everything is gone or nothing has changed, remember this. The truth is in the shift. A shift that's already happening. A shift that's still evolving. And a shift that, whether people realize it or not, is already influencing decisions across the country. And this is just the beginning. Because the real story isn't just what changed, it's what changes next.